Hey everybody, it's Uncle Grumpy. Welcome to Grumpy Tonight. Well, that was kind of startling, wasn't it, the way I did that? Boom! Okay, thank you for joining us. As you can see, I'm joined by Julie Ezell, as always, my co-host, and Representative Rosecrants. Earlier, we tried to record this, and I actually called him Senator. I think is this like a premonition, maybe? We seeing into the future?
Governor, maybe?
Do you have
governor?
bigger eyes on a bigger purse here?
Oh, president, why not?
Okay.
Everybody else.
Why don't you start by telling us what district you represent?
You bet. I'm House District 46. That's actually a very gerrymandered district from West Norman, Norman south of Highway 9, all the way to Noble, Oklahoma, which is south of Norman. So it kind of looks like a little dumbbell. Been there since 2017. Was reelected again in 2018, and love my job.
So you're a Democrat, right?
Yes.
Is that a heavy Democrat district, or is that?
No, it's a 60% Republican, 40%
Really?
Democrat. Yep.
That is certainly gerrymandered there, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I know this is off the subject we intended to talk about, but are we not coming up on, with the new census next year, more of this tweaking of the electorate?
Yeah, something that's really concerning, honestly, to me is that we don't have a independent redistricting committee here in Oklahoma. And as a former geography teacher, I actually understand what that means.
Yeah. How do we fix that?
Gosh, elections matter, man.
Well,
I mean, that's
what do we need? Do we need a bill, or what do we need? What's the process?
If you don't change it at the ballot box, then you have to have the money and the backing to get it on the ballot.
So you think we need a petition?
Yeah, a petition. Thank you. Yeah, That's really the only way you're going to be able to get it done. I think people would vote for it if they had the chance. I don't think we're going to get anything out of the legislature to then, to put it up there and put it on the ballot. So it would have to be a grassroots idea, and I just don't.
I'm going to ask all of you to look up your district and tell me what shape that is. And if you can come up with the name of what shape that is, you let us know so we can name all those shapes that they call our districts.
Parallelogram, something like that.
With the cross between a circle and a triangle. I've seen some where people across the street from each other are in different districts.
Yeah.
But if you go around the block, it's the same district as the other. So I mean, they're so picked out. I mean, that's a rigged election if I've ever seen one.
And it gets worse in other states. I mean, you should see Florida, Pennsylvania, and New York. I mean, you're talking they look like those Rorschach like little things with ink blot. Yeah, it's crazy. So.
Well, and Chris, I don't think most people realize that the party in control draws those districts.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Obviously, if you're the party in control, you're going to be against legislation to change who drafts it. And, I just think from a fairness perspective, both sides, because the Democrats until, 15 years ago were in control, and now that's flipped. So just from a fairness perspective, let's have an independent body draw it.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think maybe that needs to be a petition. We need to start talking about doing soon.
We've got a lot of stuff we need to put on.
Okay, back to what we're here for. First, I want to thank the sponsors as always, and a special thanks today to Sweetleaf in Bartlesville. They're allowing us to give away a doctor recommendation. So if you will tag somebody in this video and share this video, I'll wait until Wednesday. I'll see how many. I'll give everybody time to go watch it, share it, tag it. I'll pick through the names of everybody who shared it and tagged it, did both those. I'll put those names in a bucket like last time and draw those out. Last week it was the hoodies, or it was 2 weeks ago.
Now, Chris, I'm going to think there's some corrupt politics going on here if this one wins the free doctor's recommendation.
I think we might be able to squeeze out an extra one if he wants a doctor recommendation.
I probably could use it at the Capitol.
Right?
I think a lot of us
probably. Somebody asked me one time if I would ever run for office when I first started doing this. Yeah. I said they would never let me in there because the first thing I would do was write a bill to create a medication room.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not so sure that would go over well.
Be
like in the 50s when they had smoking and things in the building.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you look at it the right way, then why not, right?
Anyway, I had a point. What was it? Oh yeah, they're letting us give away a doctor recommendation. Now you've got to be able to get up to Bartlesville to Sweetleaf. As you can see, I've got their shirt on. They have both the dispensary and a health center about 3 miles away where they do doctor recommendations. So they're taking care of everybody. They've also got an RSO program I want to tell you about. If you have some ailment that can be helped with RSO, you show that paperwork to them. They will sell you I think it's a 30-day supply. It's a small supply, but it's for a starter. It's a 30-day for a penny. So because they can't give it away, so they're trying to help as many people as they can. They grow all this and process all this themselves, so they're doing everything start to finish. So thank you to Sweet Leaf. Tag and share, and we'll give away that recommendation. Also, Green Country Bud in Tulsa, Max's Garage in downtown Muskogee, and of course, as always, the Greens Bakery here in Oklahoma City. I think that's it for now. Do we pick? Oh, and Scissortail Law. My apologies. That one would have cost me dearly. Don't forget, Julie, Scissortail Law, right here in Oklahoma City. I think that's it, right?
I think so.
We've got to work on making that list longer. It'll fill up more airtime. Okay, so today we've got some particular issues we want to talk about. I've asked Representative Rosecrants to be here to give us for lack of a better term, the flavor of the Capitol on some of these ideas. You're not in the party that's in control, and I think that gives you a unique perspective because you're not in the middle of the mess. You're watching it, but you still have an insider view that even I don't have. So I'm hoping you can bring in some insight into this. Julie, as always, I'm counting on you for the legal angle. So how about we start by...
I know, same thing. I'm like...
We want to talk about the advertising for cannabis. I know there's new rules coming. I'm not sure which rules we have here. I'm hoping the existing rules.
Yes, both
okay.
Actually.
Okay, good. Of course, you're prepared. So I want to talk about what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. I want you to help us determine what they may be trying to regulate down the road. Like I say, what they may think of some of this. Mm-hmm. I know we've fought hard to fix some of the rule. I can't remember which bill it is. The bill that limits the advertising. In fact, makes the opaque packaging, and you can't even put anything on your packaging. But there's more to advertising than just the exit bag or the storage bag. So can you tell us what we've got here?
Yeah. So, currently we're still under the rules that went into effect last August. And, right now the package labels can't be attractive to minors. They have to, say on there, keep out of reach of children.
Okay. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to have to. Can't be attractive to minors. Mm-hmm. I saw somebody post a picture yesterday of Fred Flintstone.
I saw that same post, and I shared that with an attorney friend of mine because we both were aghast. That is that type of product. It was Fred Flintstone, and it showed like Fruity Pebbles.
Fruity Pebbles was
like the cartoon
the
character.
Kind, yes.
I mean that clearly is enticing to minors, and that absolutely is restricted under these rules and not allowed. I even saw...
Yabba dabba don't.
Right there. Oh, we've got some comedic relief.
You've got competition today. He thinks he's funny too.
No, sorry. Took me a second to even get there.
I was up with a client last week, a dispensary client, and there was a package, and it was edibles, brown packaging, but it had just kind of cartoonish looking characters on there. And I would say even that is attractive to minors. Anything that, cartoony whatsoever, any common characters like Fred Flintstone or anything like that. And, keep in mind that this isn't just the packaging. There's another rule that says that no commercial establishment shall sell or offer to sell by means of any advertisement or promotion, including any statement, representation, symbol, depiction, or reference, which would reasonably be expected to induce minors to purchase or consume marijuana or medical marijuana. So this doesn't extend only to product labeling, but any advertising that anyone's doing.
So are you saying that I have to make sure that I remain as unattractive to children as possible?
Well, I think you're doing a good job with that already.
I'm hoping I scare the daylights out of him.
That's great.
She's great. I love her. I'm hoping I really just... you know what I want to see? This year, I want to see an Uncle Grumpy Halloween costume. I think that would be great. Just a beard, some glasses, the hat with the cannabis leaf. Preferably for adults.
No, I think it would work. I have a question about that. Seeing how I deal with language, not as much as an attorney, but that's what I do for a living. Reasonably expected to induce. So what are we talking about there exactly? You said known cartoon characters, but what about also stuffed animals, things like that? Like, what do you think?
The hard thing about this is, it's very subjective. And so you kind of have to look at it with a broad lens. Anything that might reasonably attract a minor is hard to pin down, but I think most of us know it when we see it. And also, if you see something that you think maybe is on the edge, err on the side of caution, because this is something that's going to put your commercial license up for, suspension or revocation if you violate this. And so when in doubt, go without.
So is cannabis advertising now the new pornography, where you'll know it when you see it? Well, no.
I don't know where you're going.
You'll know it when you see it. You just said.
Okay.
You just said. Okay. Well, because it's a fine line. Some people call it art. Some people call it pornography.
Oh, I see what you're
that
saying.
becomes a legal case that ran all the way up to the Supreme Court. It's funny, yes, but it's a real issue.
I see what you're saying.
It's a real issue. So is the cannabis advertising the new pornography? Are we going to have to wait for a judgment from a judge to determine what that line is, if that line is subjective, as you say?
I mean, I think we can, but again, as an industry that has since the beginning, this industry has always prided itself on good self-regulation and implementation. And so, again, I would say if you think that it's on the line, err on the side of caution, because remember, you're in a conservative state, and so you're going to have very conservative people looking at these advertisements. And again, remember that marijuana for children, especially, under the entire program, but especially for children, is supposed to be medicinal. Yeah. And so this is not something that we are in any way trying to target kids unless they need it.
So then how do they do this? Let me ask you, how do they do this to remain legal? And let me ask you, Representative Rosecrants, how do they do this and remain in favor with the people in the Capitol? Because that, I think, is my worst concern. As I've said from last year at the beginning of summer, they would regulate our behavior. Yeah. I said back then, this is chess and not checkers, and what we do is going to determine what they do in 4 moves from now. So how does that fall out? How do we remain legal, and how do we remain friends with the lawmakers?
Well, this job, and a lot of people honestly don't know what we do, but I mean, we're representatives. More than lawmakers, we're representatives, meaning we take into account everything that our constituents say, even statewide too. I mean, I don't turn away anybody when they come to my door. And
you might want to start.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt. I hate to jump in here, but I'm going to interrupt to point something out. This is a distinct difference I noticed between the House and the Senate. Yeah. Everybody in the House says, I talk to people from all over the state. I never shut the door on anybody. I've had Senate members come out that we've called out of the chamber. I've had them stand in front of me and tell me, look, I'm going to be honest with you. If it's not in my district, if I get an email and it's not in my district, I immediately archive it and I never go back to those archives.
Well, that's interesting.
And that's just the other side of you guys. That's the other half that we have to work with.
Well, it's probably up to the lawmaker or the representative to do what they want to do. Strangely enough, we're like a small business. We get whatever we put into it. And that's the outcome we get. At least that's the way I look at it. So if I want to be the best representative I possibly can be, then I need many, many different voices so I can make a decision. So you're not going to see me just choose one or the other side. I'm going to try to make the best decision I can. So when it comes to that, it's about listening to not just people in the business, but also parents. I'm a former teacher, so I'm already used to listening to parents and what they want for their children. And I guarantee you from talking to some parents about this already, they are afraid of the commercialization, but aiming at children of medical marijuana. They don't look at it as medical marijuana. Still, they look at it as my kid's doing drugs. And so it's a big push that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to watch what we do if we want this to grow to the levels that we want it to grow to help patients out the way we want, even young patients too. That's the whole thing. This is medication. So it takes a conversation, and it's going to be tough, I think. Yeah.
So Julie, to remain legal, I don't know that anybody, I understand the Fred Flintstone was clearly a blatant violation, but clearly that was also an out-of-state product. We all have to acknowledge that. But short of it being that obvious, in the law, is it a large gray area? And you say you've got the new law here too, or the new regulations. How is that going to change? How does this wrap up?
The new health department regulations that are going to affect are largely going to stay the same. I would say that they tighten this down even a little bit more. And so if I was a commercial license holder, I would not target any of my advertising or products towards children whatsoever. And what I mean is, if a child needs medication, that's incumbent upon the parent to decide and research. And so, when you're packaging or coming up with logos, so long as it's, nothing, like I said before, cartoon or, toys or anything that, kind of has a fun, whimsical theme, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
A logo with a cannabis leaf is fine, or, even some plays on it, with different graphics, but nothing even remotely that's going to appeal to a child. And you can still use colors, you can still use, different types of packaging, just,
So you're saying if we're advertising to the right age group, the legal age group, although children are legal here too, but they can't purchase. They have to have someone buy it. If we're advertising to the people who are actually going to do the purchasing, then the window's fairly open. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, think about it in terms of medication. Do you see advertisements for, directed to kids for children's Benadryl?
Right, but we understand the children's advertising has to stop, but I'm asking you to broaden that. What can we do in far as advertising to adults? How much fun can we have with that? In your building where you work, I've heard references in meetings to not liking the use of certain keywords. Do you know what any of those are? Is there a certain theme that you're getting from them as to what we should avoid? I know in that particular instance, it was words like baked and things. They were hoping, I don't know how they were going to regulate that.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, words that imply overindulgence.
See, okay, so you're talking about, because I've had this same issue with people making posts on Facebook. Like, they were excited when 788 passed, and they were like, "We gonna get stoned today," stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I think they don't understand. Well, it could be. It's understanding what it is, but at the same time, it does give a freedom of sorts, I think, to some people. But it is medical marijuana, and it's extremely important for us to remember that's what it is, especially when you're talking to your lawmakers or your state representatives or your senators, because there is a lot of them up there that are truly still walking on eggshells in this whole entire situation.
Let me ask you this. What is the security of the program? And what I mean by that is, we know this is not a constitutional amendment. This was a state statute. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if the Senate decided to turn on us, this whole program could come to a screeching halt. Is there any truth in that? Yeah. I know everybody's political careers might come to an end, but say they throw caution to the wind, what can they do?
Well, I think the main piece I've been watching out for is the county option, or leaving up to municipalities, getting it out of everybody's hands. Most of the people that got elected, the majority, are still extremely conservative folk, elected by extremely conservative folk, which means they like small government. And so what they love to do is take it out and then say, okay, go back to the counties, go back to the municipalities, and then make a decision based on that. If you do that, though, that's a little dangerous, because you look at the different areas. There were areas that
very dangerous
on 788, and then you're going to talk about people that still need medication. That's the whole point behind this, and that still isn't really getting through to a lot of your more, especially if they voted against 788. They're the more loud representatives or senators that are saying, hey, we need to do this, this, and this. But then, activists, and then patients, and then business owners now. And there's quite a group who want this thing to go the right way now, including lawmakers like myself and senators across the aisle. So that's good. We're getting a large group of people together to do this the right way. But then there's other people that are like, no, government can't do it the right way, so you got to watch out for that. So it's an interesting.
Well, whether government can do it the right way or not, this is the government we have. This is the government we have to work with. That's what I tell people all the time. I meet people all the time. They throw their arms up in the air and say, I couldn't go and sit with these people. Well, these people are people just like us. You're one of these people. I sit with you all day long. We're not going to agree on everything. That's how people are. So, but we have to work.
Sports. I watch Game of Thrones.
We have to work within the government that we have. I remember when I was a kid hearing stories of what was it, Tipper Gore, yelling and screaming at Ronald Reagan, and then meeting at the White House for drinks afterwards. When I was a kid, that was the way politics was. That's kind of how I am. That's why I like go to the Capitol and scream, but then afterwards I want to sit down with everybody.
But I'm telling you, that's the way it is with us too. I mean, I don't think it's. Remember, I'm relatively new. I'm a super freshman. I wasn't elected this year. Actually,
it's your second term, right?
It's kind of fun, yeah. And plus, I went through teacher walkout.
So, are you hazing people now?
Yeah, no.
Are you hazing the newbies?
Possibly.
Are we
going
to hear about? No. Are we going to hear about hazing?
No, because see, we already saw something like that happen in the Senate side, and I don't know everybody well enough to do any kind of hazing. So, but I'll tell you what, though, it does give me an advantage because. Last year was historical with the $1.6 billion budget hole and me being elected as a teacher straight up out of my classroom, kind of before the wave actually hit. I have learned how things work up there. I've become a lot more nuanced in the way I am. I was an activist before I became a teacher, an education activist, public education. So when you get up there, you can't be like, yeah, we're going to just do this. Let's go. You got to learn how things work, how people think. You got to be pragmatic. You got to see the whole landscape. It's like you said, it's chess match rather than checkers.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the IDs being taken at the dispensaries, and I want to talk to you about the freshmen coming in.
Sure.
We'll be back in just a minute. This summer of 2018, despite a fierce and well-financed opposition, the state of Oklahoma passed State Question 788, giving the citizens the most open medical marijuana system in the U.S.
The people of Oklahoma spoke last night, and they said they wanted medical marijuana.
Critics tried to frame 788 as being too loosely written, pointing to the bill's lack of qualifying conditions. Proponents countered that the bill would allow maximum access to the widest range of patients. State Question 788 passed by more than 13 points. My friends call me Grumpy. I'm a citizen lobbyist on the front lines of the cannabis revolution in the great state of Oklahoma. I represent not only the 507,000 individuals that voted for medical cannabis, but my fellow citizens who need this medicine. Join us as we travel the state to meet with politicians, activists, business owners, but most importantly, patients. And we're back here at Grumpy tonight, here with Julie Ezell and Representative Jacob Rosecrants.
I was about to say, you pronounced my name right.
Did I?
And then you went Joseph Rosecrants.
Well, so at least I'm trying. At least I'm trying. So we were talking, Julie, you mentioned something during the break you wanted to mention before we get on to what we actually have notes for.
Yeah, we were just discussing over the weekend how there was a flurry of activity regarding the LMMA verification site being down.
Now that was down Saturday, was it not?
Yeah, it was down Saturday from about 8 to 5, and my understanding is that OMMA sent out an email saying that the site would be down if you wanted to update licenses or anything like that, but didn't indicate to dispensaries that the verification portal where they go to verify a patient license would also be down and inaccessible. And so, there were kind of 3 ways that dispensaries went about this, really not having any notice because they didn't know the verification system was going to be down. They either, did not sell anything and shut their doors completely from 8 to 5, or they only sold to people who were not first-time customers and they had seen their, verified their patient license before, or they, sold to anybody that came in with a valid patient license. And
without verifying it.
Without verifying it. And as I was walking through the current rules in place right now, the current rules, talk about there being a verification system. They also, and I remember State Question 788 also requires there to be a phone number to call to verify, which I don't think has ever been created. But the current rules talk about a verification system with that 24, character ID. But they do not talk about verifying the validity of the license at every dispense. Every time you see the patient, there's no mention of that.
Okay, so they have to verify that the 24-digit code, which is what their ID is with the health department, that digit, they have to verify that that's an active working code. And that's it?
Well, not even exactly that. All the rules really require is for them to keep records of the patient license number, the 24-digit code, and who they sold to. There's provision talking about you can call this number or get on the website to verify, but it doesn't require you to verify. I know that the rule changes coming into effect will require you to verify at every transaction, but right now, it's not required.
So they didn't have to shut them down?
No, my clients, I advise that under the current existing rules, they could absolutely, if somebody presented with a license, unless they had reason to believe that license was invalid or fraudulent, go ahead and make a sale and document it. There's nothing that requires them in the rules to verify the validity of a license.
Oh, interesting.
Now, what I told those that contacted me to do was to sell to those whose license they had verified in the past. Most people were, at this point, repeat customers. I'm sure there's some newbies out there who just picked up their card yesterday who would just be out of luck.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I actually saw posts about people talking about lawsuits and trying to recoup their costs from their losses for that day from the OMMA.
Yeah.
That just seemed a little extreme to me.
That type of lawsuit isn't going to be successful. What I would say, though, is, the rollout of this website maintenance could have been better communicated by OMMA. They did not say, they said, hey, applications are going to be affected, patient applications. They didn't specifically mention, hey, you're not going to be able to verify a license for 9 hours. And so it hit everybody by surprise. And so I think now from this instance, in the future, anybody knows when they see that site's going to be down, they're going to know what that means. But I just think it was poor communication, and strategic thought on how that was communicated.
Is there a way, I'm assuming this is website maintenance, is there a way to force them to do this maintenance, say Sunday night at midnight, like most companies would do in this instance?
You're talking legislatively?
Yes.
I honestly don't know. Maybe through the rulemaking process.
I mean, it could be put in a rule or in a bill. I would say that, the department is using either contracted or department employees to do this maintenance. And so they certainly would have the freedom to schedule it whenever they want. And it might be that, whoever with the department that was authorizing this didn't realize that this was going to take, the verification system down as well. But it absolutely could be done overnight.
Might be future legislation.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they continue to do this throughout the summer where this happens on a regular basis, because I imagine with most IT situations, maintenance is monthly, I think, in most situations. I'm not really from the corporate world, but
monthly.
So, if this happens throughout the summer, perhaps we can get some of you guys to write something up to fix that.
Clean up language.
Well, because as she stated here, as you're saying in the new rules, it says they'll have to verify that every time. Now, when did those take effect?
Well, so
do we know yet?
We don't know yet. So these rules, the new proposed rules, have to be permanently adopted by the interim commissioner of health. And then they have to be sent to the governor for approval. And so they have not been formally adopted by the interim commissioner of health. I think the public comment period just ended. So it's still going to be a little bit of while. It's still going to be a little bit. The governor has 45 days to sign them once he gets them. He might sign them on the second day like we saw initially with rules, or he might take longer.
Representative Rosecrants, let me ask you a question. We found in some instances, people wanted to remove the health department from the situation. They do have an enormous amount of power in these new rules. They can make stuff up as they go along. We know they have monthly meetings. We're going to have to reshuffle the deck every month. Is there any appetite in the Capitol for possibly next year creating a standalone agency aside from the health department? Like has been talked about in the past. I know there's not time to get something like that out this year, but is there any flavor for something like that down the road? Any appetite?
Well, I haven't heard anything, but in my opinion, I don't think it's a bad idea because, well, first of all, I think people are anxious to see how much money this is going to bring in because that may help them decide. Oh, can we actually afford to have a standalone, OMMA or whatever you want to call it, which I'm sure would still be called that. But I've always kind of thought it was a little bit strange that it was attached to the Department of Health. But no, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard any ideas that are being floated around. Honestly, very strange how things are at the Capitol. After 2612, House Bill 2612 passed, people are just like, we're done.
Yeah, we did our job. We spoke to that. We're done.
High five. We're done. Yeah. So that's basically what's been happening there.
So
I'm still, since I've gotten involved in especially in the medical marijuana working group, I keep in touch with those guys and the ladies involved there and try to see, are we going to come up with ideas that can make this better? I mean, I've tried to think of things myself by looking at other states. I'm a big believer in.
Are you saying that they don't want to pass any more cannabis bills at all? And do you think, I know the wrestling match that went on there last week, do you think that's going to iron itself out? Or do you think we're going to end up with what we have now until next year because nothing else is going to pass?
If I was a betting man, that's what I would say.
You would say we're going to run with 2612 the way it is until next year? That is good. That's going to start a lot of very early senatorial campaighing.
That's what I hear. And again, if I was a betting man, I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be for sure. But and that goes both ways too. You're not going to have any bills that are going to try to lessen the effects of 2612 or make it better either way. It's you're gonna. I think it's just going to stay pat, and that's the way. I would say that's the way the powers that be want it to be. In future sessions, who knows? Maybe if there's enough outcry or if there's enough people contacting us as representatives and senators, then something can be done. Again, that's kind of how legislation comes to be. I mean, at least that's what we really hope that it is, although we're seeing more and more that it's dark money groups and special interest groups and out of state. And I think we're number 5 out of the United States of America for fill in the blank bills that are like.
I saw that the other day.
That's ridiculous.
And, I actually know that to be. I've run into that firsthand because last year when I was going through 3468, when I first got involved in this, it was John Paul Jordan on the House side.
Yeah.
And he had put together this bill from places he couldn't explain to me. And when I pulled out the part on the home grow, it turned out it had come from Ohio, from a failed Ohio bill.
Sure. This
was a conglomerate of about 4 failed bills throughout the country. They were all bad ideas. I don't know. I guess they thought that would be okay. And, I got to tell you, we were ready to settle for some of that stuff. But things were a lot different a year ago. They were a lot different a year ago.
I mean, 100%. They were so different. First of all, I can't believe anything passed this fast. And if it passed this fast, then you had to have a lot of people that were okay with it, especially kind of your powers that be, the power brokers here in Oklahoma, which that a lot of times will leave out your patient groups or your more activist type groups. Yeah, as you can see with some of the vitriol, even based on towards me, which I've been working as hard as I can to make sure that we have small business protections in this. And a piece of legislation I'm looking at, research only right now, is what California has done with any kind of overage of medical marijuana or marijuana. They've gone recreational.
Are you talking about on the personal side or commercial side or what? You say overage?
It's. I'd like to see it on the commercial side. That way, because then you can have people that can't afford this medication. It's expensive still. I mean, believe it or not, is this the compassionate care bill you were talking about? Yes. Okay. Something like that, because I'd like to make sure that people that are Medicare, and I know there's already provisions for
now,
that,
I can tell you that if we could get a legal way to do it, the home growers could easily produce with their 6 plants. Those that know how to do it could easily produce more than what they need and give that to your charity, as I wanted them to give it to Hemp for Hospice. And if you remember, I testified about that in that first joint session. Right. That would be ideal. That was the question given to me at that time was, what do they do with the extra? And I said, Hemp for Hospice. Well, I would love to see that. I don't care what the name is. I don't care. This compassionate bill you're talking about is something I want to be heavily involved in.
We'll keep talking and love to talk to you about it too from the legal side of it all, because I think it's needed. We have a framework involved now, and that's been blessed by the powers that be. So now let's make sure that everybody has access to this medication. Yeah.
Can I jump back real quick to one thing that was brought up earlier? Chris, you were asking, and the representative, if there, was any thought about making OMMA a standalone agency. And, and I think that we all know that I personally am not in the business of defending the health department. But a year ago, that agency had 0 employees dedicated to this project. And once, 788 was stood up, they had 2 months to bring this online with literally no knowledge. And, do they, continue to have, problems and rollout and all of that? Yes, but if you, once you become aware of everything the health department does, which is way more than I could ever comprehend, I think that you see pretty quickly that, yeah, it does need to be a separate agency because the health department does too much and wields too much power. But, I would say that they've done pretty good with what they had.
Yeah, my
it
point
doesn't belong there.
Yeah, my
I
point
also
is
would like
not.
to agree with that.
Yeah.
I have no issue with what they've done, especially in the time frame.
Well, yeah, and I wasn't saying that way. Just,
Yeah.
saying that they're responsible for so much
Yeah.
that they couldn't possibly have done any more than they have.
And that's the reason for what I'm saying.
Yes,
that's the reason
exactly.
why, because they may not be the best one.
Right.
I don't like the fact that they're making rules. They have so much power, and they have these meetings once a month or however often they decide to have them, and we don't know what's going to come out of them. But that's not my biggest concern, because we create another standalone agency, it's going to have those same powers. I understand that,
Right.
but it's going to be one that's dedicated
to
cannabis
and to have the expertise
Right.
on that issue. And that's the
right.
other thing
And
I
we
would
don't
say.
have that in the health
No,
department.
you don't. I mean, a team was put together at the health department to focus on this, but a year ago, none of those people were involved in marijuana whatsoever.
Yeah. I
Myself
met them all a year
included.
ago. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it needs to be an agency where it's just focused on that, because the health department does so much that they can't give the attention to
Good.
marijuana that it needs.
Okay, before we run out of time, I want to talk about the IDs. Okay. This has to do with showing your ID when you go in the dispensaries. This has been a hot topic on Facebook. This is something I've talked about in the past. The 24-digit code. I've been around this since before it passed. The 24-digit code was designed so that they would not get all the information off of our driver's license, because cannabis, unlike other drugs or other medications that are accepted in society, no matter how deadly they are, cannabis has such a stigma with it that we needed special protections like our own privacy when going into dispensaries. Now, my reasons for this go beyond that. I'm afraid law enforcement's eventually going to get that information, but it's also that what's the dispensary doing with that information? And I say that as knowing that after doing this at a couple dispensaries, watching my email fill up with junk mail.
Well, and Chris, I think it's I think you need to take it even a step further than that. Not only does a dispensary have access to your driver's license information, but that is stored in a system that the dispensary has no obligation and likely nothing in place to protect. And whoever their, point of sale system providers likely, got some kind of firewall or protection on that data. But look at Target, look at, all of these places that have had hacks. And so your confidential personal information is being stored there, and it takes, just one hack, and they've got everything they need to, impersonate
So
you.
what is the law? What is the actual rules? What is it they're supposed to be doing and not anything more?
They are required currently, under the current rules, to see your patient license, and as we said earlier, if they can verify it, they're with the 24-digit code, not required. Presenting a driver's license is absolutely not required, and I will tell you what drives that. That is driven by point of sale systems that are based on other states like Indica Online and MMJ Freeway, and that's part of their system to gain more customer information, or because it's a requirement in other states. There are workarounds for all of those systems where they do not have to use the driver's license. Most dispensaries just haven't learned that, or assume because their system requires it that it is mandatory. But a dispensary absolutely cannot legally require you to give them your driver's license before they will make a sale to you.
Well, I know there's workarounds for it, because in the case of my particular sponsors, I've gone to each one of them and said, are you doing this? Some of them were at the beginning, and I've said, you don't need to be doing this. You need to figure out how to get around it in your system, and they all have. So I know there's workarounds.
Right. I've heard from, initially when talking to some people about, well, our system requires it, we don't know how to do it. And then when I talk with them, well, what is it your system's really wanting? Typically, the system is wanting their name, their date of birth, and their gender. And so all of that, except for gender, can be taken from the patient card. And 95% of the time you can guess on gender. And if you're really unsure, come up with a nice way to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So what is on the driver's license that's not on the patient card that they're getting?
Address.
Yeah.
Driver's license number. The driver's license number is a huge one.
So when they're
Address.
scanning, they're not only, some places are taking a picture, they're taking a photocopy.
Mm-hmm.
Other places are scanning the back.
Mm-hmm.
And is that not just a
Yeah,
digital?
and when you
everything?
scan that back, I don't know if more information comes through than what's on the front of the license or not. I have no idea. But if you have somebody's full driver's license information, that's all you need to impersonate them and open bank accounts and other things in their name and credit
And that's
cards
not
and,
the law, though. But are they
No.
required to show a second form of ID? Do they not have to show a second ID to verify?
That's what the patient license is for. What's the point of the patient license?
You're saying there's
who's driving? I mean, you already told me who's driving this, but are there some places doing this and some places not doing this?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to clean that up.
And there was two of them I went to in Tulsa last week with a friend, just stopped by to see how they were, and they wouldn't let me in the door because I refused to let them have a copy of my driver's license. And they were rude too. They made it clear that was the rules, that was the law.
Oh, they're just
That's what they told me. I, of course, laughed and laid down my card and said, "Okay, I suggest you look who I am because I think you're mistaken."
What's the
and
fear?
walked out, and that was it.
Right.
What's the fear? I mean, I guess what people are already doing fraudulent. No, I don't think that's it. So,
But they've convinced the patients that it's the law. Therefore, they can continue to gather all this information. There's no fear on their part in my mind, other than some are afraid they're going to get fined or lose their license. Now, I was told that they had to that you do have to show a second form of ID, but only to let them look at it to verify that it's you on the
not
card,
to scan it though.
not to scan it or take a copy.
There's nothing.
But
in
you're
the
saying
current,
that-
there's nothing in the current rules that requires that. The rules that are getting ready to go into place with the health department, can require that. They do require them to verify the card every time and you to present your card. And I don't have a copy of the new rule in front of me, but I believe the new rule might require you to present some additional identification if they need it, but currently absolutely not.
Interesting.
Doesn't 2612 also allow the health department to keep all the information that's
Yes,
on your
yeah.
application?
Yes, it
So
does.
this is that
but
window that I'm worried about, that we start to open where they start to gather information. And look, we all know that the OMMA, and I'm not saying it was devious, but due to being overwhelmed or whatever the case may be, they managed to put out the addresses of every business, everyone that applied for a commercial license in the grow department now and process department. Now, while that's relevant is because so many of them were found people scoping out the property 24 hours later to rob them.
Yeah.
And they still don't know if they're going to come back. They've had, I went to places right after that happened. They were having 12-foot fence and barbed wire put up that week after that. So
That's a public safety, massive public safety
yeah,
issue.
especially when an industry that operates primarily in cash.
So how long before our personal information slips out there too? How long are the patients going to be protected before something goes terribly wrong?
Well, strange enough, I listen to my constituents. Hey, I do my job, and this is the number one fear for just about everybody I've talked to that's getting a medical marijuana card is that where is that information going, and can I trust once again the government to with this information? And I guess there's been ideas that maybe we could line item that out of 2612. That's not going to happen. So, my big concern is the same concern as everybody else. Why is that needed? I'm not quite sure how to answer that.
And on the physician recommendation form, it has an optional portion in there to capture what the diagnosis is underlying the card. Was it pain, anxiety, depression? I've always told people, physicians especially, don't fill that portion out. It is optional. But again, they're already capturing all of that data. So you are going to have not only, your personal information you submitted to the OMMA, but medical history information. They're going to keep, regulations of every bit of marijuana that Uncle Grumpy has bought from program inception to the end. Tie it to you, your address, and
that's a lot.
Well, right? And additionally,
you're already on the list, sir.
I'm on the list. I'm on the list.
Another provision of 2612, related to this information that really gives me pause and concern, is that it allows the health department to promulgate rules to get financial information from those who apply for commercial licenses. Doesn't say what they're going to do with it.
You're talking about a means test, but not necessarily a test, just a means collection.
Yeah, just a means collection. And, we've already seen a program implemented without this financial information. It doesn't, say why they're getting it. It doesn't, cut off, there aren't any cutoffs there on whether you can get a license with it. It's just more information gathering, private information gathering. And, again, it's,
is this what other states have done? Do we know?
Well, some states, require documentation or the posting of a much high of a bond, essentially, or the financial information. Some states don't require either, though, and so I think as this program matures, they're trying to figure out, well, do we need the information or do we need a bond? Well, okay, decide with one and go with it. But just gathering the information isn't a decision either way.
It's scaring people off. I guarantee
it's certainly something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Okay, we have gone for just about an hour here, so we're going to wrap it up. Again, before we do, I want to remind everybody, tag somebody and share this video. We're going to give away a free patient recommendation. You're going to need to be able to get up to Sweetleaf Health Center up in Bartlesville. It's one of our great sponsors. I want to thank them for stepping up and doing this. As always, they're helping patients. Also, thank you to the Greens Bakery in Oklahoma City, Scissor Tail Law here in Oklahoma City, Max's Garage in downtown Muskogee, and Green Country Bud in Tulsa. I think that's about it for now. I think this has been a great show. You guys happy with this?
Yeah.
I think we can put this one out.
We need to have Representative Rosencrants back again.
I say we need to get you here. Now, look, I want to get you and your Democratic friends here on a regular basis. I want this show to be a place where both sides are heard. Cannabis is a nonpartisan issue. I don't care what you're registered at or as. I want you to come sit here and talk to me about what good you're going to do for cannabis in Oklahoma.
Well, for entertainment value too, we need to get a Republican and a Democrat in here.
I definitely want. I grew up watching Flashpoint,
right?
So I hope to be the moderator of Flashpoint someday.
There it is.
So
there it is.
This is our start right here. Okay, folks. Representative Jacob Rosecrants. I almost got it right. And of course, as always, my co-host Julie Ezell. I want to thank them both for being here and thank Moto for putting all this together as always.
Thanks, Moto.
Once again from the Capitol, or down the street anyway, stay grumpy. I'll see you on the road.